Good morning, everyone. How are we all? Thank you so much for joining me this morning for our gorgeous Whale of a Tail brush party. I'm really excited to go through this one with you. They always turn out really, really lovely. So I'm very looking forward to seeing your gorgeous paintings at the end of the session. So my name is Becky and I'll be going through the painting with you. So we'll be going through it step by step. So I'll show you exactly where to put everything and what colours to mix, how to do all the brush strokes and everything like that. So the main thing is just to take your time with it. Yeah, you can change the colours as much as you like as well. So the main thing is just have fun and yeah, be as creative as you like. So I'll just run through what colours we're going to be needing for the painting, and then I'll show you the brushes, and then we'll get started really. So the colours that we're going to use for this one are all of our primary colours. So we've got yellow, red and blue, and we've also got a little bit of black and white as well. Now you can, as I said before, you can change the colour scheme as much as you want. So if you wanted to add any other colours in there, feel free to add them to your palette now. But I am going to be mixing quite a lot of these colours together. So we are going to get some purples in the sky and a bit of a turquoise colour by mixing the yellows and the reds and things with the blues. So we are going to achieve quite a lot of colours just with these ones on the palette. But yeah, if you don't want to mix, you can add any other colour to your palette if you want to. So they are the paints we're going to use. I'm working on a really large scale canvas, just so you can see it a bit clearer, but you can work on any size canvas you have at home. So if you want to put it on a square canvas or whatever size you want really, you can change the shape of it. So you could do it so it's portrait if you want to. You could even add lots of other things into this painting as well. You could add like a little boat in the background or some shooting stars. You could add anything you want. So just go for it. Be as creative as you want to be. So the brushes that we're going to use, we just need 2 brushes for this one. So you need a large brush for your background, and that's going to really help getting the nice big thick brush strokes on the canvas, and will make our backgrounds lovely and smooth. And then we'll just need something slightly smaller. It can be one like this, or it can be one like this shape as well. So you can have a round brush or a flat one. So either of those are going to be really good for the whale. It might just be a little bit trickier to get the whale in with a large brush. So you want something that's big and then a smaller brush. Either of these will be perfect. And then we'll also need a little bit of water to rinse off our brushes, get them nice and clean, and a little bit of tissue to finish off. So there's quite a lot of things we need. So just paints, canvas, water, brushes, and tissue. And then we're all set. And an apron or an old t-shirt or something, because it could get a little bit messy. When we add these stars in, there's 2 ways we can do the stars. There's one way where you can flick the paint, which might be a little bit messy, but if you've got the correct gear on, it should be okay. And we can also tap it with the brush as well. So just when we get to that, you can decide what sort of thing you want to do. If you want to go messy or if you want to go neat. So in terms of YouTube, you can pause the video as many times as you want. So we're going to be painting for roughly about an hour, hour and a half-ish, but the timing is really down to you. So if you want to spend a bit more time on certain parts, then you can do. Just pause the video, rewind it, and go back over anything as many times as you like. So yeah, use that as much as you need to. We also have a live chat feature. So I'm painting along live with you guys this morning, but if you want me to slow down or go back over anything, you can always use that live chat feature, which should be on the right hand side of your screen or underneath, and you'll be able to comment on that, and you can talk to me, you can ask me questions, you can just have a general chit chat. So yeah, use that as much as you like as well. So to be able to use that, you just need to be logged into a Google account or a YouTube account, and that should allow you to comment. And I think that's pretty much everything. So it's just past 11. So if you need to get your equipment sorted, then just pause the video, maybe get it all ready, and then we'll start in just a minute or 2. So one thing I do ask is that you take lots and lots of photos of your canvas as we're going through all the different stages. So we're going to start with the background, and we'll build up the layers little bits at a time. And it's always really, really lovely when you capture each moment as the painting develops. And yeah, I'm always so impressed with these paintings. They look so fantastic at the end. So yeah, hopefully you enjoy it as much as I do. So yeah, we're going to start with the background. So we are going to grab our large brushes to begin with, and we need to start by dipping it in the water. So we always want to add a little bit of water to the paint to make sure it spreads across the canvas really nicely. And we're actually going to start with the halfway point going along the horizon line in the sky. So we're going to start with the sky in the middle, and we'll build it up to get darker and darker towards the top. And then we'll add the water. Then we'll do all the stars, the moon, and finish with our whale and the ripples. Sounds like a lot, but we're going to break it down. So large brush in the water, give it a good mix around. And we need to start with a really light blue. So I'm going to start with mostly white on the brush. And I'm going to move it to a new part of the palette. So I've just picked up a little bit of white. Not all of it though, we still need to save some for later. A little bit of white, new part of the palette. Hopefully you can see that okay. And I'm just going to mix the water around so that we don't get any drips on the canvas, because that's not a very good way to start. We don't want any drips. So we've got the water really mixed up in that paint. And then into the white, I'm going to add a tiny bit of blue onto the brush and mixing it around. So we should end up with a really, really light blue. You don't want to do too much blue just yet. So mostly white. And if you have got a bit too dark, don't worry, you can just top it up with a little bit of white. And it should make it go a little bit lighter again, like this. It's pretty much just white with a little bit of blue. And we're going to start with our brushes vertically. So that means we need all the bristles to be lining up in a line going up like this. And if you've got the same brush as me and you've got one side that's got longer bristles and one side that's got shorter bristles, then you'll want your long bristles to be pointing up. And that is going to help the paint to flow really, really smoothly across the canvas. So we need to find just under halfway down our painting. So halfway is roughly about here. And we're just going to go a little bit lower. So you might want to use your finger on your other hand just to sort of measure it out a little bit. And then from here, we're going to go side to side like this all the way across that, just under the middle point of the canvas. All the way along, really, really nice light blue brush strokes. Now you can add loads of paint to your brush so that the paint is definitely going to cover the canvas and it's going to stay nice and wet so we can blend up. We're going to do lots of blending with this picture. So nice long brush strokes. Once you've got the paint on the canvas, you can then just do long brush strokes side to side from one side all the way to the other without stopping. And then I'm going to add a bit more water to the brush, a bit more paint. And I'm just going to make it go a little bit higher. So we're just going up the canvas a little bit more, still with the same light blue. So we want to go just above halfway now. So we're just making that band of light blue a little bit thicker, and we're going to bring the paint up a little bit further. So we've got this blending area where we're going to start adding in a little bit of bit more blue in, and then we're going to get darker and darker as we get further up the painting. So please do ask me as many questions as you like while I'm here. But even after the stream is finished, if you've still got questions, you can always send us a message through email or through our Facebook page as well. And we'll always be around to answer any questions that you've got. We want to make sure you're happy with your paintings. So, yeah, once we've made that band of blue a little bit thicker all the way across the canvas, just along that halfway point, we are just going to add in a little bit more blue into the colour we've got on the palette already. So into our really light blue that we've got over here, I'm going to pick up a little bit more blue and mix it round. A little bit more. So we're just going a little bit darker. And you do want to do this next bit while the background is still wet. So you don't want to rush it, but you don't want the paint to dry up too quickly. So once you've got that paint on there and it's on the canvas nice and thick, quickly make up the next batch of colour. And then we can go straight on the canvas. And because the paint's still wet, it should just blend in really nicely like this. So we're just going to go just above our last batch of colour. And we're going to go side to side of the brush. And we're going to pull the brush down a little bit. Still while we're going side to side though. So we're still doing those long brush strokes from one side to the other. But as we're doing that, we're also pulling the brush down a little bit. You can see I'm working my way down into that first band of colour we started with. So all that's doing is mixing those paints on the canvas so we get a really smooth change of colour. And that's the blending part I was talking about earlier. Okay, so we still want to see some of that light blue. We are just adding that dark blue just on top and then slightly inside that lighter colour. So I'll just bring my canvas a little bit closer so you can see. So it's a nice smooth change. Oh dear, just flicked myself in the face with the paint. Oh dear. All the way along. And then we're going to keep going, adding more and more blue into that paint again. So give the brush another little rinse off in the water, pick up a little bit more blue and mix it round. And we're just going to keep getting higher and higher with the background. So I'm going to go just a little bit above the last batch of colour, all the way across. We're just going to go along the top first. Loads and loads of paint on the brush. And then once we've done just above the last colour, then we can start pulling the brush down a little bit and blending it in with the colour underneath. And we are going to go back over the top in a second with a little bit of red in the blue as well, and also a little bit of black. We're going to do that in a minute, so just keep going with the same colour, going side to side, pulling it down a little bit as well, remember, so you're doing all that blending. I'm going to say blend quite a lot. But they are going to look absolutely fantastic when they are blended. It is my favourite word. So you need to do quite a lot of brush strokes. You might have a bit of a sore arm after this. It's a good little arm workout. So feel free to stand up if it makes it easier to paint. I always prefer standing up from painting. Even though I'm not at the second, I am sat down, but it does make it a bit easier when you are standing up. So again, just going to keep going all the way up to the top of the canvas, adding more and more blue into that paint. So a little bit more blue, mix it round. So it should be getting darker and darker on the palette every single time. So by the time we get to the top, we're pretty much just using that blue by itself because there's so much blue and not much white left in the paint. So you can see it's getting really dark now as we're going towards the top. So just do a little line of colour above the last colour we use, and then once you've done that nice long brush stroke all the way across, then we can start blending it down again. There's that word again, that blending. And then again, just keep going until we get to the top, and we're pretty much using that neat blue. So that's just the blue by itself without any white or any other colour, just to get this is just the base layer, so we are going to add lots and lots to it in just a second. But it's always good just to get the paint on there first, so we're quite happy with the brush strokes and how much paint and water we need, and then we'll start making it nice and detailed. So we're just going to go all the way to the top. So the top bit is literally just that blue by itself with a little bit of water. So if you wanted to change the colours in any way, feel free to maybe do like a sunset colour if you want to. It's not too late to do that now if you want to, because you can turn your canvas upside down and have this as the water and have the sky underneath if you want to. So if you if you're feeling like you don't fancy doing the blue sky or blue water, then just change the colours as much as you like. You can even have like a rainbow sky if you want to. You could do anything you like. Okay, so hopefully we've got a lovely smooth sky going on. And I'll just bring mine a little bit closer again so you can see all the colour changes. So we started with a really, really almost white colour just below halfway. And then we added a little bit more blue as we went further and further up until we ended with just neat blue at the top here. And what we're going to do next, in just a couple of minutes, making sure everyone's okay up till now, we're going to add in a little bit of black into the blue. And we're actually going to start from the top and work our way down again. So we'll do blue and black to start with a little bit of red as well. So we get a slightly purpley hint at the top of the sky. Then we're going to come down and blend it out into our lighter blue. So if you look at the example one, we've got a lovely band of purple. That's what we're going to be doing next. So make sure you've got that whole top half of the canvas nice and filled in with that lovely bright blue paint. So I'm hoping you're all okay up till now. While we're just letting everyone catch up, what we can do is paint around the sides of our canvas. So you can do this any colour that you like. I'm going to try and match the colour that I've got on the front. And because we're going to be adding a bit more to it, we will be changing the colour a bit more, so we can paint over it again if we need to. But we're just going to give it a little bit more time to dry up for now. So I'm just going to start from the back of the canvas and pull the paintbrush forward. And that way we get a lovely border all the way around the side. And they look super duper professional when they're up on your wall. And they're all nice and finished on the sides. And you can paint along the top as well. Don't forget, we are going to be changing the colours slightly, so we're going to have to do this again in a second. Or you might choose to do like one solid colour all the way around. So if you want to change the colour, you could do like a nice yellow border or a black border, or even red would look nice as well. Do any colour you like around the sides. So all down those edges, along the top, and then down the other side as well. So only where we've painted so far. If you're matching the colours, if you're doing one colour all the way around, then you can do that all the way around if you want to now. But once you've done the sky, I would definitely take a little photo of your canvas. Okay, and then down the other edge as well. There we go. Okay, so the front has had a little bit more time to dry. I hope you're all okay up till now. Please do let me know if you've got any questions at all. I will go back over any colours or brush strokes, anything you need to know, I can help you out with. So into the neat blue that we've got on our palette, into that neat blue, I'm adding a little bit more water again, and I'm going to pick up a little bit of black, and I'm going to mix it round. So what we're making is like a really dark nighttime kind of blue. So it pretty much looks almost black on the palette, but it has got that little bit of blue in there to make it like a nice midnight kind of colour. And then from here, we're going to pick up the tiniest little dot of red and mix it round. And what that does is make it to a nice dark purple kind of colour. It's like purpley navy mix. And then we're going to add a little bit more water again, just because I think the paint goes a little bit sticky otherwise. And we're going to start from the top of the canvas now, and we're going to start gradually working our way back down. So long bristles pointing up exactly the same way as we just done before, but I'm going to start right at the top here, and I'm going to go all the way across. You see I've made it really, really dark along the top edge now. Might even add a little bit more red into this to make it a little bit more purpley. So if you have a purple already in a pot of paint, then feel free to use a little bit of that as well. I don't actually have any purple, so I'm just mixing red into it. But you can get a slightly brighter colour if you add that neat purple in there as well. So it just depends what you have at home. So I've added a little bit more red in there because I really like that purpley colour that comes out. And then as we get a little bit lower down the canvas, we're going to go side to side, going down this time. So we're still going across, but as we keep going, we're just pulling the brush down slightly. What we need to do is add a little bit more water to the brush and a little bit less paint. Make sure you maybe tap it on the tissue just to make sure it's not going to drip or anything at this point. And with a fairly damp brush, so not dripping wet, just a little bit damp, we're just going to go slightly underneath that purple colour. And now the paint's not so thick, we can start blending it down. So we're just trying to smooth out the line underneath. Mine's looking a little bit stripy still, so I think I need to add a little bit more paint and just blend out a little bit more, bringing it slightly lower down so it just goes a little bit more smooth. So all we did was add a little bit less paint to the brush and a bit more water, so it's just going slightly more runny, and that will make the paint go a little bit more see-through rather than completely covering everything that we've just done. It's just kind of like a wash over the top. So it's really, really watery paint along the top. And can you see I've still got quite a sharp line between those two colours. So I'm just going to add a little bit more to that point there to try and blend out the lines slightly. Let's just soften it a little bit more. You don't want to do too much in one spot though, so if it doesn't quite cover, it might just mean that the paint is just still too wet underneath and it's just going to pick up the layer underneath. So leave it to dry if it's not quite covering like you wanted it to. Okay, that's a little bit smoother now. So feel free to add any other colour into your backgrounds if you want to. There we go. So we've just made it slightly darker on top, keeping it really light at the middle point, making it a slightly purpley, nighttime kind of colour. So once we've done the sky, the next bit we need to do is add in the flicks for the stars. So the reason we're going to do the flicks next is so that we don't get the drips and things in the sea. So this is where it could get a little bit messy. So I will show you the neat way first, where you can be really precise with these dots. And I'll also show you the messy way, and you can decide afterwards which one you prefer to do. So I'm going to rinse off my big brush, and I'm going to pop it to one side. So I'm rinsing it off in the water. I'm going to wipe it on the tissue, and I'm going to pop it somewhere safe because we're going to use that brush again when we start adding in the water. So I would use one of your smaller brushes, preferably this one. I think is probably the nicest brush to use for this next bit. And we're actually going to use the wooden part. So turn your brushes around the other way. Feels a bit weird, but you'll see why in a second. And what we're going to do is just pick up some neat white paint on the brush without any water. So just dip the brush in. It's got a little white blob on the end of the brush. And we're going to add in lots of dots all the way around the painting in the sky. And I would put most of them in the top part, so in the darker parts, and then not so many in the lighter bits. And you don't need to press very hard at all. Because the background is still a little bit wet, if you press too hard, all that's going to do is make the stars go a bit blue. So you just want to very, very lightly tap on the canvas until you get these little white dots showing through. So this is the neat way of doing it, which is really good if you want to be really precise about where you're putting these dots. And the more random they're spaced out, the better. So you want them to be really mixed up, nothing too neat. So like nothing too you don't really want lines of stars. Or have them all equally spaced out. You want them really random and all over the place, really. The other way of doing the stars is to add lots of water to the bristles, so to this part of the brush. Lots and lots of water, that is the main thing. And all we need to do is add a little bit of white to the bristles, wiping off so you've got a really watery white on the brush. And from here, what we need to do is hold the brush like this, so it's flat ways, and you want your thumb on the side that's closest to you, and your finger to go over the top of the bristles on the side that's closest to the canvas. And I would start quite close, just to make sure we're not going to flick anything else other than the canvas at this point. And all we're going to do is pull the bristles back through our fingertips and then go all the way across. And you should get a nice dusting of white flicks all the way over that background. And you can actually combine the two. So I'll just bring that a bit closer so you can see. So you get two very different effects with the brush. So that's the flicking technique where you just pull the bristles back through your fingertip, and those ones are with the wooden part of the brush. So I would do a bit of both if you want to. If you want to keep it really neat, that's absolutely fine. You don't have to do the flicks at all. I'm a very, very messy painter and I quite like getting a bit messy, but it just depends. It depends where you're painting. Luckily I'm in a studio, so I've got lots of space for the paint to go everywhere. But if you're maybe working on a kitchen table, just put something out or grab some wet wipes. If paint ends up on the wallpaper, add a bit of wet wipe to it and it'll be perfect. It'll come off straight away. but don't let it dry up too much. So yeah, keep going, adding in a couple of stars using any technique you like. So the wooden bit of the brush or the flicks, see which one you prefer. And I'm going to do a couple a little bit lower, but not too many at all. So in that slightly lighter blue, you can just do like 1 or 2, just in that bottom section. Okay, and then we can let the sky dry for just a couple of minutes. So wipe off the wooden part of the brush because we don't want to get paint absolutely everywhere. So just wipe it on the tissue, and we're going to go back to our big brushes again. So rinse off your brushes, give them a good clean on the tissue, and then pop them to one side. We're going to go back to our large brush. So I really hope you're okay up till now. I hope the paint hasn't gone everywhere. I'll just bring my canvas a bit closer again so you can see what we have. So we've got a nice dark purpley sky going into a slightly lighter blue with lots of stars all the way around. So if you need to pause the video at all, if you want to have a little break, or if the paint's really, really thick on the canvas still and you want to give a bit of time to dry, then feel free to pause it at any time. Okay, so the next bit is to add in the water. So we're going to rinse off our large brush just to get the bristles a bit wet again. So dip it in the water, wipe it on the side of the cup so it's not too wet. And then we're going to add blue by itself, just some neat blue on the brush. And this is where we need to get some really straight lines on our canvas. So there's 2 ways of doing straight lines. You can either keep your canvas this way round and do your line going across the way like this, or you can turn your canvas this way round. So you've got a portrait ways, and you can go from the top and pull it down. Now, people prefer different ways. Everyone's different, so it's up to you which way you prefer. Maybe try with one and then switch and do the other one and see which one works better for you. So what we need to do is find just under halfway, which is pretty much where we did our sky from. And I'm going to hold the brush with the long bristles pointing to the left-hand side, handle pointing down. And we're going to go all the way across, nice and slowly, from one side all the way to the other. I would just do it as slow as you can, and that's the best way to get this straight line. So we definitely don't want any canvas showing through between the sky and the water. So it might be worth doing this just a fraction higher up. So it's just overlapping the sky. I'm going to go all the way along. And the reason why we're having the handle pointing down just means that all the bristles are going to be lining up nice and neatly. Now, it probably won't go straight first time. You might have to go back over it a few times just to make sure it's nice and equal all the way across. But don't overdo it, because you might find you'll spend the whole time now just going up and down trying to get it smooth. And what will happen is it will just keep getting higher and higher. So once you've done one line and you think it's straight, take a step back. And if it is straight, perfect. If not, maybe just do a little bit more to it. But taking a step back really does help. And also taking a photo also helps to see if it's balanced or not. So once we've done that line, we need to add a bit more blue to the brush, and we're now going to turn it vertically again. So the same way as we did our sky. So long bristles pointing up or just vertical, whichever brush you have. So if you've got a square brush, but all the bristles are one length, then you just need to hold it vertically, as long as, getting paint absolutely everywhere, in my hair, my hands. So as long as you're holding it vertically, that's all good. And I'm just going to go side to side underneath that line we've just done to get this lovely bright blue colour. Again, we'll just get the base colour in first, and then we're actually going to add a little bit of yellow into the sea so that we get a lovely turquoise colour as well. So a little bit more blue again. I'm going to pull the brush a little bit lower down, pretty much to a quarter of the way up from the bottom. Now to find a quarter, you need to find half and half again. So somewhere around here, because that's half of the bottom half of the canvas. So all the way down to about there with that blue. A little bit more water and paint on the brush. It's going a little bit dry. So I'm hoping they're all looking good so far. I'm sure they're looking fantastic. Hopefully you're taking those pictures as well, because it's really nice when you get to the end to have a look back and see all the different stages that you've gone through, because it changes really, really quickly when you add each layer. So when we get to a quarter of the way up, or about halfway down the sea, we are then going to start adding in a little bit of black into the blue, and we're going to carry on going all the way down to the bottom. So I'm going to add some black into a little bit of blue. So I would start on a new part of the palette, so you've got somewhere to mix, and we're literally adding in the tiniest dot of black into the blue, and we're going to carry on working our way down until we get all the way to the bottom. So we can keep adding a little bit more black every time. And remember, you can also bring the brush a little bit higher as well. So we want it to be really smooth and blended. So although we're changing colour about a quarter of the way up from the bottom, we can do our brush strokes slightly higher so that it picks up the colour above and mixes it with the colour underneath. And it makes it lovely and smooth. And then all the way down to the bottom. Maybe adding a little bit more black as we get a bit further down, so it goes really, really dark along that bottom edge. And that's going to look really nice when we add in our whale. It's going to look really striking. Don't forget to keep adding the water to the brush if that paint gets a little bit sticky. Just keep adding that water. Lots and lots of paint on the brush all the time. That's going to really help getting it nice and smooth. And then I would take another step back and maybe take another photo when you've done all of that dark blue along the bottom edge. And then we're also going to add some green in just a second. So yellow, sorry, to make it green. So yeah, take a photo at this point while it's just the background. And then whenever you're ready, give the brush another little rinse off in the water. And we're going to add a little bit of yellow into the blue and a bit of black. So into that dark blue that we've just been using, so the blue and the black, just going to add a little bit more blue in there and a little dot of yellow. So it goes a really dark teal kind of turquoise colour. So I've just topped it up with a little bit more blue, so it's not too dark, and then added a little bit of yellow into it as well. Now it's not going to look much different on the palette, but when it goes on the canvas, it's going to look really striking. So wipe off the brush, because we don't actually want as much paint as what we had before. So it's slightly less on the brush. And I'm going to start just below the top of the water, going side to side with the paintbrush again, just as we did before, adding in this very subtle green turquoise kind of colour. And I'll bring it a bit closer in just a second because I'm not sure if that's showing up on the camera. So I'll just do a couple more flicks and then I'll show you a little bit closer. Hopefully you'll be able to see this. So all it's done is made some bits a little bit more green. So it's really subtle. So it's not showing up too much, but it does add another layer to the painting. Adds like another colour to it. And then the next bit we're going to do is add in our moon. So we'll let our canvases dry for just a couple of minutes. So what I would do now actually is paint all down the edges, down where we've done our water. So carry on with the large brush and you can mix whatever colour you like. If you want to match it to what's on the front, then go for it. If you want to carry on just one colour, then you can do that as well. Now I would leave the bottom part of the canvas for now, otherwise it's probably going to get stuck to whatever we're leaning the canvases on. So we'll do that bottom edge right at the end. We'll just do both sides on the bottom half. Not done this side very well, have I? Look at that there. Oh dear. Let's get back to that lighter blue. Make sure my edges are a little bit neater. Okay, and then when we've done our edges and we're happy with them, we can waft our canvases slightly. So what I would do is hold round the back of your canvas like this and just give it a gentle waft like this, nice and slowly, to get the paint a little bit more dry so that when we add in all the next steps, it's not going to smudge what we've just done. So if you have a hairdryer at home, then feel free to use the hairdryer as well. That works just as well, if not a lot quicker. But yeah, we've got loads and loads of time, so just have a little waft. If you want to pause the video and have a break, feel free to do that as well. And the next couple of steps is to add in the moon. Then we will do our whale. So we'll break the whale down into little sections. So we'll just build it up little shapes at a time. So we'll start with like some dots, and then we'll join up all the dots, and then we'll get the shapes in, and then we can add these lovely highlights, and then we'll finish with the ripples in the water. So yeah, actually I think I'm going to do the whale first. I think I'm going to do the whale first, and I'll do the moon afterwards. So we're doing all the dark bits first, and then we'll finish with all the light bits. Yeah, just talking to myself here a second, don't worry. We're going to do the whale next, and then the moon and all the highlights and things to finish. I think that would be a bit of an easier way to do it. So you definitely want to make sure that the bottom part of your water is really, really dry. So if it's quite thick with paint, you might want to have a little break and then come back when it's a little bit more dry. Or just keep wafting. If you've got music on, it definitely makes wafting a little bit easier. If I was able to play music, I would definitely be turning the music up right now. So we are going to move on to our smaller brush again. So whenever your canvas is a little bit more dry, mine's still quite wet, so I'm just going to mix up the colour while we're waiting. So we are using our smaller brush, and so you can actually use either of your smaller brushes. So if you've got the choice of two, you can use either of them. So you might want to start with the round brush if you find it a bit tricky to use this one, or try it all with this one, whichever you prefer. So either of these two brushes are going to be great. I'm going to choose this one because I think this one works really well. And we're going to make a really, really dark navy blue. So pretty much the same colour that's in the sky at the top. So if you have still the blue, black and red on your palette, then that's the colour we're going to be using. If not, I would just mix them up again. So blue, lots of black, and the tiniest bit of red in there to make it a slightly purple colour. And this is going to be the colour for our whale, which is very exciting, this part. So we'll start with almost like a Y kind of shape. So we'll do a little dot at the top here in the middle of the fin. Then we're going to do another dot down here. We're going to join it together to get a nice straight line. And then we'll do the Y shape to get the side of the tail bits in. So with the tip of the brush, we're going to go 1/4 of the way up from the bottom of the canvas, which is exactly, well, it's almost halfway up the water. Okay, so we might kind of need a couple of hands here. So halfway up the water, find that bit first. Then we need to go 1/4 of the way across the canvas from the left. Okay, so it doesn't have to be this exact. It's just somewhere in this left-hand side, not too close to the sky, not too close to the bottom edge or the side edge. So 1/4 of the way up and 1/4 of the way in. Just do a little dot like this. You don't even have to do it on this side if you don't want to. If you want to put it right in the middle with one big fat fin over the top and like the moon in the middle, you can do that as well. Literally anything you want to do, go for it. And if it goes a little bit wrong, that's totally fine. Just let me know and we can sort it out. But yeah, the more ambitious, the better, I think. So we've got a little dot somewhere in the water, about halfway up, 1/4 of the way in. And we are going to do another dot in line with this first one. So just a little in your head, just picture like a little straight line. And then we're going to go just slightly above the horizon line. So this is the horizon line where the water stops and the sky starts. We're going to do another little dot in there. It's not quite in line, so about there. Okay, so we've got a dot at the top and a dot at the bottom. We're then going to join these two dots together with a nice straight line going down like this. So if you're using the cropped brush, where you've got one side that's longer than the other, you want your long bristles pointing up. That's super important because that really helps the paint to flow nice and smoothly. And then when we've got the that main line in, we're going to add in just 2 diagonal lines. That's going to start from the top of the fin, the tail edges, and then we'll join it down into this point. So we are going to do a little dot on the horizon line. So maybe a little dash actually, so you can see it on the tail line that we've just done. So this is our point where we're going to join in our 2 diagonal lines into. So we've got the straight line from the top of the fin all the way down to the bottom. And then all we've done is a little dash on the horizon line, on that line. It will all make sense in a second, don't worry. Just got to keep going with it and it'll be fine. So now we're going to add in the edges of the tail. So we're going to go slightly higher than our top of the middle part. So slightly higher and over to the left-hand side. So I'm not going to completely touch the edge. I'm going to go a little bit further in from the edge. And all I'm going to do is add in this straight diagonal line to join in there into that marker we added in on the horizon line. And then same thing on the other side. So this is where we might need to maybe grab another brush and hold it horizontally so that you can see they're going to be in line with each other. And make sure they're the same kind of distance apart from that middle line as well. But it doesn't have to be exact at this point. It's just a very rough guide. Kind of looks like a person with its arms in the air. That's the kind of thing we want to go for. So that's just the basic shape. We're then going to add in all the curved lines and make it look a bit more like a tail and less like a stick person floating in the water. So add a bit more paint to the brush, and we're going to add in the curved lines that go underneath the tail here. So these two curved lines. So I'm going to start with the long bristles pointing up at the very edge of kind of like the arm bits. So I'm going to drag the brush down and add a nice curved line that goes all the way down and joins in to that point on the horizon line. And then we can fill that bit in. And then we need to do the same thing on the other side. Make sure it's nice and equal. So what that means is we need to have both sides exactly the same thickness. Starting to look a little bit more like a tail now. A little bit. And then along the top, what we need to do is add in like an M shape. So if you look on this one, I'll just bring this one a little bit closer so you can see where we're going. Can you see this M shape that's right in the middle at the top of the tail here? So we've got one bump that goes this way, one bump that goes that way. Yeah, so that's what we're going to start with. So we're going to go from the middle point, we're going to go over to the right and then over to the left so that we get that lovely bump right in the middle. And then once we've done that, and once I'll show you on here, we're going to add in lots of little bumps. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 little tiny bumps, if you can see those. And then it joins up into the top of the little arm bit that I was talking about earlier. Just go through it really slowly, so we're all okay with it. If I can put that back on. Okay. So the M shape. From the middle at the top of your tail, we're going to do a little bump going over to the right. So long bristles still need pointing up. And I'm just going to go over and down. And then same thing on the other side. Oh, make sure it's quite equal again, because that's definitely not. It's a little better. And then from here, we're adding in those smaller little bumps. So I'm going to add in 1, 2, 3. Have I got space for a fourth one? Yeah. And then if you need to add the a bit more to the tip of the fin, then you can do. So you can extend it a little bit more to make it fit. And then I'd fill that side in. And then same thing on the other side, so going to the left-hand side. So you've got the 2 bigger bumps in the middle, followed by 1, 2, 3, and then a little bit of a taller one. That joins up to the tip of the tail. I've got a very, very big tail going on here. So from here, to make it look a bit more whale-like, we're going to smooth off the edges at the base of the tail. So as we've got this curved line going into that horizon line, what we need to do is smooth it round. So rather than it going at such an angle, like such a sharp line in here, what we're going to do is smooth it out by curving that line down. So we're making the bottom part, so this middle part, a little bit thicker as well. So can you see the difference between the left side and the right side? We've just rounded off where the two bits all join together. And then same thing on the other side as well. So nice and smooth. Making that middle bit a little bit wider. Because whales are absolutely huge. They have quite big tails, don't they? So we might need to make that a little bit bigger. Make sure it's nice and straight. Okay, so it's starting to look a little bit more whale-like, which is fantastic. So we'll let that dry for now. And we are going to add in lots of highlights and things to make it look like it's nice and wet and he's just come out of the water for a little bit. So we are going to rinse off our small brushes, whichever one you've been using. Give it a good rinse off because we're now going to add white back to our brush. So make sure we've got some clean white on the palette and a clean brush. So there's two different ways of doing the moon. I'll show you both ways just so you know that you can choose. So you can either use your finger and add in a circle like this, just with the tip of your finger, or you can use your brush and you can push it round to make the circle. So I'll show you with just my finger. So I'm just going to use neat white by itself first, just on the very tip of my finger, and I'm going to put the moon on the right hand side, about halfway down the sky. So I'm going to go roughly around here, and you can make the moon as big as you like. So I'm just going to push my finger round in a nice big circle. So I'm just pushing it round until happy with the size of the moon, which I think because I've got such a big whale, I think I need quite a big moon to balance it out. Even bigger. There we go. So another way you can do it is with your brush. So we need a little bit of water, a little bit of white, and you just want to use the flat part of the brush. So we're always going round like this. So you can just literally push the brush round in a circle like this and then just paint in the middle. Or you can have the long bristles pointing up and twist it so that the short bristles stay where they are all the time in the centre, and the long bristles go around like the hand of a clock. So you can go clockwise, you can go anti-clockwise, whichever way feels easiest, until you end up with something a little bit circular, which mine is a little bit too oval for my liking. So just keep going until you're happy with the shape. Okay, it's a little bit more rounded. And then to give it the texture, so if you look at this one, we've got some little blue kind of speckles in it. All we need to do is pick up the tiniest little bit of blue on the tip of the brush, really, really small amount, and we're just going to do lots of little dots on the inside of the moon. So literally just tapping the brush, and we do need to do this while it's still wet so that it still has lots and lots of white showing through. So it's adding in all the craters in the moon, making it look nice and detailed. Okay, hope we're all okay up till now. Please let me know if you've got any questions. Make sure you take a photo as well before this next step, because we're going to add in our lovely glow around the moon. So we're going to use the brush for this bit, but we want it really, really dry. So I would give it a really good rinse off in the water, dry it off on the tissue, and we want to pick up the tiniest amount of white you could possibly get on your brush ever. So a little dot of white, and then wipe it off so we've barely got anything on there at all. Really, really dry, barely any paint. And we're now going to use the flat part of the brush, so just as we normally do. And we're going to push the brush around the moon like this. So I can't stress this enough, not too much paint because we don't want to add a big ring around it. We're just adding in a little glow. So you can go either left or to the right. Either way is fine. We can go backwards and forwards. And I'm just going to push the brush around really, really lightly. All the way around the moon. Adding in a lovely glow in the sky. Oh, just be careful you don't go over the moon because it's still wet. And I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger and fade off into the background. So once you've done that main ring around the inside part of the moon, then we can go further out and keep spreading it until it blends out into the background. So I want that ring to get bigger and bigger. So you can still see the background underneath the white. So it's just like a little layer on top. It's not completely covering it. It's really, really important. And I'm going to keep going with the white highlights, bringing it down a little bit lower into the lighter part of the sky. Okay, I might do a little bit above as well, actually. I think it needs quite a nice big glow. Okay, very, very bright moon in the sky there. So the next little step is to add in the reflections in the water. So we need to add a little bit more water to the brush again. So now we're actually going back to slightly thicker paint, a bit more water. Still with white first though. So what we'll do is we'll add in all the white bits all the way down here, all the way around our whale's tail, and then we'll go over the top with some blue so it doesn't look too bright. Oh, I've just felt I've got a massive clump of white in my hair. Oh dear. Don't worry, if paint does get anywhere that it's not supposed to, it comes off really, really easily with soap and water. And it just, yeah, comes out of your hair with a bit of a brush. Gosh, absolute nightmare. So we are going to hold our brushes horizontally so that you have the long bristles pointing to one side. So I would always have the long bristles pointing to the left just because I find it easier to push the brush that way rather than pull it back on itself. But it's up to you. It just depends which way you find easiest. Or you can use your little brush if you have one. So if you're using the little round brush, it doesn't matter which way round you hold it, as long as you just go side to side with the brush all the way down. So our highlight needs to be directly underneath the moon. So at the top of the water, our little dashes are going to be really super tiny, just really small little flicks. It's so small you can't see it from back there, so I'm going to bring it a bit closer. So lots of little dashes, all mixed up, so there's not really any pattern or anything in there. And then as we get a little bit lower, we can start adding little ripples to the water, and we can start making them a little bit thicker and a bit longer as well. And then it's going to get bigger and bigger until we get to the bottom part of the canvas. I'll just put that back a second because I'm going way off course there. And then we can just go back in and add in as many little highlights as you like. So I'm just going to go a bit further up again, fill this middle bit a bit more, because it went very over to the right there because couldn't quite see it. But you do want to keep them mostly flat ways, they're going horizontal, but they can definitely have lots of ripples in them as well. And you might have a couple of little extra flicks that aren't quite in line with the moon, just so it looks like the water's still glistening, just in the glow of the light, not just from the moon. Gets a little better. And we also need to go around the whale's tail. So what I would do is start right at the bottom where it goes into the water. So along this bit, I'm going to just add in a little curved line, almost like a little smiley face, that just goes right underneath the tail. And then from here, we can add in little dashes that go a little bit wider. And also, when we go around the side of the whale, we need to make sure that we don't go over the edge. So it looks like it's nice and 3D. So I'm just going to scoot forward again. So once we've done those bits underneath the whale, we're then going to do little dashes right next to the edges, if that makes sense. So I'm starting the brush on the side of the tail and I'm flicking outwards. Can you see how it's made it look nice and round and 3D? And then same thing on the other side as well. And then I'm going to add lots of little ripples going a little bit lower down. A bit more wavy as well, so it looks like it's created a big splash in the water. A few little ones at the top a bit more. And then to make it look really, really splashy, I don't know what word I was thinking of there, we are going to add in lots of little spirals to the water. So literally using the tip of the brush or your smaller brush, whichever one you find easiest, I'm just going to add lots of little circles like this, or big spirals, and flicks all the way around the ripples in the water. So really, really messy. Now, don't worry about this being in a particular place, just as long as it's around the whale's tail, that's all good. And you can do lots of little dashes that are literally just little splashes up into the tail as well. Okay, so once we've done that bit, we can add a couple of neat white highlights on our tail. So I'm just going to give it a little bit of a rinse off so it doesn't get too sticky on the brush. I'm going to add a little bit of white now, just as we did before. And the first bit of highlight I'm going to do is going to go down from the right-hand side of the tail, right at the top here. And I'm just going to drag the brush with the long bristles pointing up. And I'm going to do a little broken up dashy line all the way down like this, all the way down to the water. So it's not like a straight line all the way down, it's really broken up, lots of little dashes. On that side. And then we can also add in a couple of little dashes on these little bumps as well. So where we've added in those little bumps along the sides, along the top, sorry, we can add in the little dashes along there. Okie dokie. So now what we need to do to pretty much kind of almost finish it off is to add in a nice light blue glow to the painting. So before we do that though, we can actually add a couple more little white dots in the water as well. So we can use the brush with the wooden end of the brush, sorry. A little bit of white, no water this time. And in the reflection, in the ripples in the water, we can add lots of little dots and things all the way through those lines, and also in their own little gaps as well. So you can go right out to the side a little bit further, and remember they need to get a little bit bigger as they get a little bit lower as well. So when they're right down at the bottom of the canvas, they need to be quite big, and at the top they need to be the tiniest little dots. And it really makes it look like the water is sparkling in the moonlight. A little bit more on this side because I've got quite a big gap. Yeah, I think that's enough. And then I'm going to do a couple around our whale as well. A couple of little dots and dashes. If you scrape the brush along with the wooden part of the brush, you'll actually get a really nice effect as well. So a little bit of white, you can scrape the brush along, and you get lots of tiny little dots all in a row. And that looks quite good too. Okay, so we've got lots and lots of movement in the painting now, lots of splashes and things. So give the brush another rinse off, wipe off that end of the brush as well, just to make sure we're not going to get that white paint absolutely everywhere. And we're going to add a light blue to the brush. So we need lots and lots of white with a little bit of blue. So if you've got the light blue from earlier, fantastic. I would just use a bit of that. But mine's kind of dried up, so I'm going to do white and a little dot of blue, mixing it round. So it's pretty much the colour that we started with, the lightest blue you could possibly make without it being white. And then I'm going to wipe the brush on the side of the palette like this, just to get most of the excess off. And then we're going to paint over the white dashes that we've done in the water, but not completely. So we still want to see some of them. So I would do most of your dashes. Ooh, should I get the best way to do it? In the middle of them. So you still want the edges to be nice and white, but it's mostly in the centre of the ripples. Maybe a bit more blue actually, because the white's still a bit wet. Don't want it to smudge it too much. I'm just making it a little bit darker. It's maybe not quite as light as the background colour. So I've still got lots of the white one showing through. I'm kind of just adding to it. And then we're going to do the same thing around the whale as well. So still with that neat blue. I'm going to keep quite a lot of the middle part nice and bright actually. I'm going to do most of these blue lines around the edges. And then we can do a couple of little spirals and flicks in the middle with the blue. So rather than doing dashes in the middle, we're just going to do a couple of little spirals and little dots in the middle bit. And then with the same light blue, with a lot less paint on the brush, so wipe it off so you're pretty much getting all the paint out, the light blue, and we're going to just add in a couple of dashes throughout the whale. So you've got one more colour to add into the whale, which is a nice bit of purple as well, like a lilac-y colour. And that just makes it look really, really colourful as well. So I'm just going to go mostly over the white lines we've added in, to tone them down a bit more. So it's really, really thin on the brush. There's not too much paint in there at all. And once you've done that bit, rinse off the brush again for the last time. And all we're going to do now is add a little bit of red into the colour we've just used. So into the really light blue, a little bit of red. Again, wipe it completely off on the side of the palette so you've barely got anything on there. So I've added a bit of red into here. Wiped it off on the side so it's really, really dry. And you can add a couple of purple dashes as well. Next to the blues, kind of in their own little space. We are going to do one more colour actually. We're going to add in some black just to give it a lovely crisp shadow on the left hand side, blending all these colours in. So I'll just show you this a bit closer so you can see all these colours. So we've got the white, we went over a little bit of the white with that light blue, and then we've got the light blue, and then we've got the purple colour going over the top. The very, very last little bit then before we sign our paintings is to add some neat black to our brush, and we're going to go down the left hand side of our whale's tail with the black, and we're then going to go side to side with the brush, all different directions, using that flat edge, and we're just going to press really, really lightly and just blend out all these colours. So it's getting lighter and lighter and thinner as you get towards the right hand side. And it's just blending out all those colours now. And the very, very last little bit of the painting is to sign it. So if you want to add anything else into your paintings, you absolutely can do. You can go back in with a bit more white again if you want to in the whale. That might look really, really lovely. You can even do a little bit of white on this side as well to make it look a bit more 3D. But I really, really hope you've enjoyed painting with me this morning. It was a little bit quicker than I thought it would be, but feel free to go back over any bits and yeah, you can add lots to it if you want to. You can add loads of colours in the water, loads of colours in the sky. If you wanted to add some shooting stars in the sky, which I didn't actually say earlier, the best way to get some shooting stars in is to use the wooden part of the brush, tiny bit of white, and then, do you remember when we did these dashes in the water? It was the same kind of thing. So I would choose one or two places. So choose one of your already existing stars, I think. And we're just going to press on the canvas and drag the brush up really, really slowly with the wooden part and fade it off. And you get a lovely shooting star in the sky. There's one. I think I'm going to do one more on this side as well. Really, really slowly with the brush. And it's just quite nice to add that in at the end. So once you've done that, then sign your paintings. So it's really, really important to sign your paintings. It just proves that you've done it, and it's a really nice professional way of finishing it off. So you could use a smaller brush, you can use this brush, any brush you have, or even like a little Sharpie pen will work just as well. So you can put your name, you can put your initials, even if you've got a signature, you can put a signature on it as well. And you could do it on the front of the canvas, or you can do it on the back as well. Now, I've been saying it for quite a lot of the family events. My granddad always used to say to write little stories as well. So he always made me sign my paintings and also write a little story about them to get really, really creative. So it'd be really cool if you could make a little story up about your whale, maybe where he's been around the world, and you've got this massive space on the back to write something on it. So if you wanted to write a little story, or if you're giving it to somebody, you could write them a little letter on the back. That's always quite a nice way to finish it. So I'm going to leave it there. I really, really hope you've enjoyed the process this morning. Make sure you've taken lots of photos. If you haven't taken any of the progress pictures, don't worry, just take a picture at the end. That's all good. And you can send them to us so we can see them. We'd love to see your photos, either through email or through Facebook. If you've got Facebook, you can just publish them on our Facebook pages and we'll see them that way as well. Don't forget, you can get all of your equipment on the Brush Party shop as well. So if you're running out of supplies, you can go to brushparty.co.uk/shop, and all the things that you need for a brush party are on there. So don't forget to have a check out of that. And we've got one last thing to tell you, which is a discount code that you can use for any events. So if you have a look behind me, we've got a lovely new summer owl painting, which is called A Hootiful Summer's Day. Very, very cute. So if you fancy painting the little guy, or any other painting, so any family events, any watercolour events or acrylic ones, you can use a discount code called PaintMe15. So just paint me and then 15, all in capital letters, no spaces. Oh jeez. And you can do that at the at the checkout, where you can click voucher codes, and you can just pop that code in there, and it'll give you 50% off on your events. So thank you very, very much again, and I'm going to finish the stream now, so feel free to go back over it as many times as you want to. So we'll see you all again very, very soon. Bye.